Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Drifting Pen, a podcast for voice-guided Zentangle classes. Today, we're going to draw a simple Zentangle project, and you just need a pencil, a pen, paper, and something to blend the pencil with, like a tortillon or just your finger. I'm using a white Zentangle tile and a Sakura 01 micron black pen. If you have a larger nibbed pen around, you might want that for later. So we're going to start by creating our border around the tile. So add 4 corner dots on your tile, and then connect those dots with a line. And those lines can be straight, they can be curvy, loopy, whatever your pencil decides to draw. Now make a light mark about 3/4 up on any of the border edges. A light mark. And then find the opposite edge, the opposite border, and draw a line about 1/4 of the way up. So now you have a border line, and one of the border lines has a mark about 3/4 up that line, and across from it, opposite of that border line, there's a little marker about 1/4 of the way up. The marker on the left side is going to be the starting point. Or, of course, you can start on the right side. It just depends on whatever hand you're drawing with. It could be easier to start from the right marker than the left marker. It really doesn't matter. These are just guidelines. And if you start or land off from these markers, it really doesn't matter at all. So now you can put down the pencil and pick up your pen. So find your starting marker, and we're going to make a series of very wide, rounded M's, like the letter M. And this series is going to follow the border, and it ends up at our end marker. Now I'm turning my tile to make it easier to draw for my hand. You can do the same as well. I'm turning the tile so that the first marker is a little bit closer to me. And I'm going to start to draw a rounded, very rounded M. And the middle part of that M is not going to hit the border. And if it does, it's okay, of course. And each of these humps that we're making, or each of these M's, they can be different. They can be wider than the others. They can be narrower, taller, shorter. Make them unique. You can keep the pen on the paper, never lift it up, or you can lift it up and turn the tile, whatever works for you. And you're finally landing on or around the other marker. Okay, now let's draw another series of these M's or these bumps, tunnels, whatever you want to call them. So you can start with your pen at about the center of the top of that first bump, and then continue until it lands at about the center, the top of the neighboring bump. And here you can pick up the pen and decide to leave a space between the bumps or not. You can just continue creating your bumps without lifting up the pen. And you might want to make them a little bit smaller than the first row that you created. So I did a little bit of a mix on mine. Let's add a third row. And this row is going to be much smaller than the previous row. So we're just getting smaller and smaller, and we're just connecting between each of those bumps. Of course, you don't have to land in the center part of the bump. You can land offset. Okay, now that that row's done, I encourage you to take a look at your composition so far and see if you want to add more bumps or if there's any spaces you want to fill. You can do that now. I'm just adding a few bumps, random bumps behind the third row. Okay, so now you should have about half of your tile filled with these bumps, or maybe less than half. It really doesn't matter. The point is that the bottom half of the tile is covered in these scale-like bumps. Now we're going to draw a series of single lines or stems that come out of or grow out of these bumps. You can pick anywhere in your composition and draw a line from the bumps that reaches up towards the top of the border or in the general direction. The lines can be straight or curvy. It really doesn't matter. You can think of these as stems. I'm making about 3 or 4 of these lines, and they can cross. But just keep in mind, we're going to do something with these stems, so you might want a little bit of space between them. Okay, once you've got your lines down, we're going to create the Tangle rain with them. So these are our lines for making rain. If you're not familiar with rain, no problem. I'll walk you through it. So put your pen at the top of one of those lines that you've just drawn, and then simply draw a zigzag line all the way down to the bumps. So you start at the top of that line and you just zigzag all the way down. And the zigzag can be odd, meaning it can the points or the triangles that it creates don't have to be alike. They can be quite different. Now find your next straight line and start with your pen at the top of that line and create another zigzag line down to the bumps. So what it ends up looking like is a series of triangles on a line and a line that goes through them. So keep going with the rest of your stems. And if you have lines that are crossing, so you have 2 rains that are intersecting one another, just imagine where those zigzags happen behind each other. Or don't imagine at all, just draw them. Okay, once these zigzag lines are done, we're going to fill in the triangles with black. So if you do have a larger nibbed black pen, go ahead and find it. Otherwise, just take your time filling in each triangle. Now you don't have to fill these triangles in. if you don't want to. You can fill them in with dots or tipple or printemps or anything you'd like. Here we're going with black mainly for contrast. So go ahead and start filling in your triangles. This will probably take a little while. You can hit pause and come back and meet me for the next step. I think I will, as I'm going ahead and filling in my triangles, I will pause the recording. And I'll meet you at the next step. Okay, hopefully your triangles are all filled in with black. Now the next step is to aura each of these rain twigs or rain stems, however you want to imagine these. And I find it easier to rotate my tiles so my rains are facing me. And I start at the base of those rains where they're attached to those bumps. And then we'll make a very narrow aura around the zigzagging lines. So even auraing the stem, it's a very narrow aura. Turning the tile as you go and taking your time. There's no rush. You can hit pause at any time. And these aura encapsulates the stems, setting them off or apart from the rest of the composition. And don't forget to turn the tile as needed, whatever feels good for your hand. And don't forget to breathe. Take a few moments to remember to take a breath. Okay, so I'm done auraing my rains, and I'll move on to the next thing. And we're almost finished. I think this is a good time to take your tile and hold it out in front of you, and just see if there's anything extra you want to add. Maybe an extra bump somewhere, maybe another rain to add. I'm looking at this and I want to add a background. So I just want to add some texture to the background. And my textured background is simply going to be straight horizontal lines that just fall under the rain. And maybe I'll add some sparkle in some places. So sparkle is when you just lift the pen up and add a little bit of white within that line. And when you keep repeating it, it looks like a little bit of sparkle. And also, I'm not concerned if that line is continuous from edge to edge. I just want these lines to add texture, and they don't need to match continuously from edge to edge. And you can add a background of your choice. It doesn't have to be straight lines. Or maybe you don't want a background. That's also fine. Okay, now that that's done, let's move on to the shading. So we'll start with our bumps. Put the pen down and pick up your pencil. And starting with the bottom row, or that first row that we laid down, we're going to add some graphite to the tops of those bumps. And just laying down a a light layer at first because we can always add more later. Also turning the tile so that the pencil can easily reach that line. And then pick up your tortillon or blending stump and gently smooth out that graphite. It doesn't need to come out too far. We just want to give the illusion that the row behind it is set back. And now on to the next row. We'll do the same thing, adding some graphite to the tops of those, or around the bumps. It doesn't have to be just the tops. It can be around those bumps that you see. We just want to add some space between those rows. And then blend as you go, or blend right after you add the pencil. And we'll do the same thing for the last row, and if you have a last row. For the last row, I just have a few bumps, so it's just a few outliers there. Okay. And now I'll add some graphite to the rain. I'm just going to add the graphite along the edge of each rain sprig, meaning I'm adding graphite all the way around the rain and then gently spreading that graphite out. So again, turning the tile, adding a light layer of graphite along the edge of the rain sprigs on that outer part of the aura. And keep going, taking your time. And now I'm going to add some graphite along the inner edge of the borderline. Before you do the borderline, if you want to, you can outline that border if you want to, you can outline that borderline with the pen and then add the pencil shading. You can also outline it afterwards. I find it easier to draw the borderline first and then add the shade. So now I'm just going along the border and then smoothing out that line and just bringing it out a little bit towards the center of the tile. Okay, now that should be it for this tile. And that's it for this episode. So thanks for listening. Thanks for drawing with me. And I look forward to seeing what you come up with.